Sorry I'm late, folks. I got stuck in the detour. Anyway, welcome to the Monday, September 19th budget meeting. And Mike, I'll turn it over to you.
All right, thank you. Before we get started, I just wanted to let you know this publication's in your mailbox, right, Char? And we've had a lot of talk about what does a fire chief do? There's a nice article in here on the legal duties of a fire chief, so make sure you read that. Kind of tells you gives you a real good idea what they do. We already know what you do, Eric, so we don't need to talk about police. So we've got a very quick agenda here, but it might take all afternoon, so let's hope not. We're going to talk about health insurance. So just so you know, this packet includes the most current rates on health insurance that are in front of you. I got that late in the day Friday. We've got some emailed questions from council. I've responded to most of them. I've either talked about them, all your questions to you, so we'll spend a few minutes on that. And I've got some good news to share on some funding I was able to obtain for us. We'll talk about the budget packet and any other questions and next steps that come up. Just as a reminder to this group is we do need to have a preliminary levy certified by the end of this month, which gives us 9 working days after today to do that. So if we can't come to some agreement today or some ballpark number, we'll need to meet again and make that decision. But I'd like the final day of the month to have available to get documents submitted to make sure everyone gets what they need at the county. So let's talk about the health insurance update real quick. When I put the budget together, I went and looked at the league's budget guide, and they usually give you a pretty good idea of what to estimate for health insurance. This last time around, they said good luck. We don't know what the impact of COVID is going to be on health insurance plans going forward, but put a big number in there. So I put 10% over last year in there. The actual number is at 5%. And that's what's reflected in this budget packet. So we've had a few staffing changes, and so what I did was I reflected what I know as of Friday for staffing changes. And when I do that, there were some that changed from single to family and family to single, both ways. And then I put in for the new police officer fully loaded at a family, just to make sure. So it really didn't make a whole lot of difference in the budget packet. So we've got till October 14th to approve the renewal. That's when the documents need to say, yes, we're going to renew with you. It's the same plan we had last year. It's the same plan that's compatible with the 3 bargaining units you've already settled with. So it's really up to you. If you want to approve it today, you can do that, or you can wait till the council meeting I think it's on the 10th, is our next council meeting, correct? October 10th, is our next regular meeting? Yes. Either way is fine. But I'm not suggesting. So you can do it today and we can cross that off the list, or if there's any discussion you want on it, okay.
Do it at the council meeting and we'll just move on then that night. We got 4 days left after that.
All right, we can do that.
Yeah.
So then let's talk about all the questions I got from most of you. So since our last budget meeting on the 7th, got quite a few questions, which is great. I've been able to respond to most of them. And the good thing is they're all related to each other. So one of the things we talked about, just to give you an update on, at the last council meeting, or the budget meeting, we talked about the council seating, where you're sitting right now. I think the consensus was we wanted to do something different, like a horseshoe, not sitting on tall stools. Patrick is still working on that. He's trying to get back some numbers for us to take a look at. So what's our best guess of what that's going to cost? That's yet to come. There's a question on what are we doing with a potential apartment complex that's wanting to be constructed? What kind of funding? Where can we work? What can we do with that concept? One of the questions that came up was, how could we help them Aside from a direct loan or some kind of arrangement through the EDA, really only the thing that I'm seeing you can do is not charge certain fees, whatever those are. Whether it's connection charges or park dedication fees or whatever that number comes to. You could consider waiving those or a portion of that. I haven't seen a building application for a site or any business plan on what that might look like yet, so I'm not sure if there's really anything you can do about that right now. One of the other questions that came up was with respect to the Loon Center, and the question that always comes up with the Loon Center is where are people going to park, and what does that look like? So I think I grabbed my Loon Center. So this is out on our website. This was an engineering report done back in November of 2019 that was presented to the council and others and the Cross Lakers and that whole group, done by WSN. While this talks a lot about where are people going to walk, it does address parking. And this is out on our website. It's under doing business inside City Hall. It's located under Public Works Department, and there's a couple documents out there. This is one of them. But page 14 of this document addresses parking a little bit. What the city hasn't done, I mean, they talked about the lot where everybody puts boats and cars and campers and stuff to sell. They talked about that one, trying to buy that. But if you look at where the Loon Center is, they're not going to allow any additional parking at that site. They talk a little bit in this study about how many daily visitors they plan to receive. Then they talk about potential areas that are not being utilized that are within walking distance. But it doesn't identify who's going to pay for it, how it's going to work, and when it will be done. It's got some recommendations. One of the recommendations in that study, if you remember, I think there's a picture in here on the very last page that talks about sidewalks. So since this report was issued back in 2019, we've received funding for a sidewalk basically going from where the trail ends, around this corner, up to Bald Eagle, and down to here. We've also received funding through the Federal Lands Access Program grant to redo the intersection on 3 and 66.
Who's building it?
Who's building what?
The Loon Center. The city isn't, so who's building it?
The National Loon Foundation. There's a
Okay.
separate foundation that's building
Aren't they
it.
required by state building code to have sufficient parking spots for the Loon Center? Otherwise, they can't get a building permit.
I don't know the details of them.
But
and
that's part of the
It may be.
permit process. So they're going to have to find parking spaces in order to get a permit.
They've already passed those hurdles.
They already what?
They've already passed those hurdles.
I don't understand. What do you mean?
It's being built on federal property, and my understanding is they've got a lease with that. We don't even have to issue them a permit.
So they don't have to have a permit, but don't they have to comply with
Again, I don't know all the
building
details of
code?
that. And
I
they've-
would say they have to have the parking spaces sufficient for that Loon Center.
That's not for us to determine. They've already passed those hurdles.
Because it's on federal property, we have no control, none of our rules or laws, ordinances, none of it applies to anything.
Well, we're not under the state building code anyway, but you would think that the federal government would comply with the building code.
They're not.
Well, the last thing I heard was the study that was put up on the screen was done in the busiest weeks of that year.
Yes, it
July.
was.
And there were engineers from WSN here, and they made a determination that really nobody was parking in town square parking. So the last I heard about it was they were gonna try to figure out some sort of shuttle system, that if people were coming, they'd shuttle them back and forth if they didn't wanna walk or couldn't walk.
So anyways, that study is out there to look at. Parking's addressed. As far as details of who's authorizing the Loon Center and who isn't, it's not the city of Cross Lake. There may be some information out on their website that might answer your questions, Marcia. But it's not our project. So anyways, that's parking. The other things that came up, I think Aaron asked these questions, and then Dave Schrupp, you had some other questions. One of the, and this will lead into our next subject, bonding. How do we know what projects are done and which ones aren't? What we try to do is we try to identify in the budget process which projects are done, which ones aren't. Did we carry over any funds from projects from the previous year that we didn't complete? And if so, how much was that? So with that said, let's talk a little bit about some of those questions. And then we'll get to the questions I got back on September 8th. So these questions are from our last council meeting, where item 6 on the agenda, which was the balance sheet, was pulled. And specifically, the item that was pulled from that was the assigned fund balance that related to projects at the Public Works facility. That amount was about $33,000. And so for the first 7 months of the year, we were okay with that number. But in August, we wanted a little more information on it. So with that said, we'll look at that one first. So back in 2020, there were several projects related to the joint maintenance facility that were not completed by the end of 2020. That total amount was $56,500. And so what the council determined at that time was to put those in an assigned fund balance along with the money we hadn't spent for Wild Wind Ranch Road at the time, carry it over and take a look at it in the next cycle. Now that decision was made after we already did our budget for the following year. So because we had levied for those amounts, we didn't want to levy for them again, so we took them out. We said, we've got the cash in the bank, so we're not going to levy for those items. Then we decided, we were looking at things like new temperature controls, some lighting, painting, some ductwork and cleaning. There was HVAC in there too. And then we were looking at that time, what are we going to do with the brine containment area that we struggle with? Budget amendments were recommended by Marcia in August of 21 that resulted in a reduction of that amount, getting us down to about $45,000. Okay, remember we took out there was about $32,000 of stuff we took out of there, and then we added another $20,000, $15,000 or $20,000 to pay for the security system down there. Since then, we've spent some money on some lighting. We had a small piece of tax forfeited land we had to pay the tax on. We added $5,000 in the budget we had already levied for, and that's how we got to our balance of $33,000. And that didn't change through the end of August of this year. And then that's the meeting where the balance sheet was pulled, asking for more information on that. Now remember, we're going to spend about a third to a half of that to fix the columns in there. And we're looking at some other improvements that HVAC and others. So you're going to end up the year, if nothing else happens, you're going to use probably at least half of that for stuff you're already committed to that hasn't come through the system yet. I know they're working on the columns. They started that, I don't know, within the last week. So we should be getting a bill from High Tech within the next month. Hopefully the columns will be done in the wash bay. We can take care of that. Now Pat's also working on some of the other things. What are we going to do with the brine tank? What are we going to do with the cleaning? He talked about improvements outside of the joint maintenance facility at our last meeting. Some of those improvements He talked about where one was redoing this. And remember when we were doing the building project, we were trying to find some kind of clever way to seal off the staff area. With all the COVID issues we found out afterwards. If you've ever been down to Crow Wing County, you've seen the glass they put up down there. I think at that time we had gotten a preliminary number for like the glass, similar to what the police have, but only more friendly, user-friendly. That, and then you could take down the plexiglass shields that are up there now. So there'll be more to come on that. The other thing we did at the last budget meeting was we took out the $5,000 for the duct cleaning. So this model does not reflect that. So at some point, we'll take that out because you made a motion to do that. But we need to consider the cost of those other things or reallocate that number to something else. So I don't have that number today. Yes, Marcia?
So we should have enough in the assigned balance, that 33,000, in order to cover the columns and the other stuff that you're talking about.
No, we don't.
You started out with
The
58.
$33,000 in the assigned fund balance is for the joint maintenance facility. It wasn't for the buildings in City Hall. We don't have a balance for that.
Oh, you're talking about these things, but in the other, in the
Yep.
joint, in Public Works, there's enough there
There's enough there to cover the joint maintenance facility.
to take care of the
There's-
columns and that stuff.
Yep, and there'll be about, so that $33,000 balance will probably be by at least cut in half. Now, the open question is what other things are we looking at yet in the next month or two that we want to get done next year?
So the columns, and I'm trying to remember what the quote was 16,000, 18,000, what was
It's
it?
about $18,000.
18,000. So you're going to subtract 18,000 from that 33, and that's where we are right now, unless we do more.
That's correct.
Okay.
What I'm also saying is that overall, you probably need more, to add more than the 5,000 you took out, put it somewhere else to cover this and other things we don't have numbers on yet.
Well, I guess we can't discuss it because we don't have the numbers, so,
Well, we can discuss it. We've got ballpark numbers, we just don't have them firmed up. I don't have the details on that.
Where I get confused, Mike, is it's 18,000 for the columns, but the county's paying for half of them, right?
They'll pay for a portion of it, not all of it.
well, they pay 53%.
Agreement with them, the 53,
There is,
47.
but there's other things in there too, like the brine containment item. And 3 years ago, we were looking at about $8,000 to fix that. We haven't fixed that yet.
I'm just trying to follow
Yeah.
it, and
You're going to be about cut in half. When those two problems get solved, about half of what you've got there will be gone by the end of the year. All right? So if your goal is to get to zero, I wouldn't suggest that. Okay?
Can we assume they're going to pay half of, roughly half?
Roughly half, yeah.
Okay,
Which you'll offset it with some
right.
other stuff there too that's pending. So we'll pull the $5,000 out of there for purposes of this meeting going forward, all right? So then, I got a question, it's down here at the bottom, that came yesterday, about, basically says, what are we doing with the bond schedules? So we talked about the county road payment in 2024, sewer connections, and the COVID money and soil and water conservation money. So we talked about the 5,000. So let's talk about these other three items here, okay? So with that said, let's talk about the fire truck first. And so what I did was at the council meeting, when we talked about the fire truck, and we've had some questions on this, from, well, we didn't approve the fire truck unless we agreed to do this, but the actual council motion was to go order it. The short story was to order it, and we'll come back with some funding on it. The motion was to order the fire truck, and if anyone's interested, it's at about 1 hour, 22 minutes into the video, if you want to revisit that. So let's, for the
So-
moment, assume,
Can I interrupt here?
Sure.
Can I find out from Chip, if you ever found out if they would take our payment in January 2024?
he ended up getting a quote from Community Leasing Partners that would, I think I sent that to Mike, I'm not sure.
Yeah, you did. What was the interest rate on that again, if you have that?
4.19.
Because I was able to get 3.5.
It says, receive this quote for the balance, which would be allowed delivery in 23 and final payment 24 at a rate of 4.19%. So I don't know how to read this. So 398,000 would be in January of 2024.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, Chip, I'm having trouble hearing you.
I'm not sure how to read this. I sent it to Mike. I'm not sure. It says they would make a final payment would be 2024, and I think it says $405,743 at a 4.19% interest rate, if you went that direction.
Yeah.
But the first email was that we had 2 or 3 months following delivery of the chassis to make the final payment. The first email that
I
you
sent
got.
Yeah, it says delivery with the balance due would be 2 to 3 months following receipt of the chassis.
So the point being is, we got a fire truck ordered. We'll show the full expense next year. Then we're talking about what we have for a payable on the financing side and how the cash is going to go to pay for it. What Chip has is one option at a little over, what, 4.2% you said, 4.1 something?
See, the email that we got did not say we were going to finance it for 2 or 3 months.
But the email didn't say we could pay for it in 2024.
It said 2 to 3 months following the chassis.
After receiving the chassis, not the truck. The chassis is separate than the truck. Chassis is the truck itself, and then
The
you
bare
put the,
frame truck.
And then
that's
you
the
build the
frame
box on
truck,
it.
yeah.
So they're not saying, we have to make a full payment before we get the truck?
No, we have to pay for the chassis, and then the final payment would be the balance of the truck.
Well, I guess I didn't understand the whole financing thing then, and I don't think that we should be going in debt for a fire truck. Because that was, my understanding was that we were going to pay $265 and then the balance 2 to 3 months after delivery of the truck. So we paid $83,000 more for that ladder truck because we financed it. I just think we should either wait till we have the money, or, well, that's the only way I would be willing to do it. And I'd like to make a motion that we cancel the order.
Let's think about that for a second. So what you're not taking into account are 2 things. One's the time value of money and future price increases. And the way this schedule is laid out, let's just go look at that schedule since we're talking about it right now.
Can we entertain that motion or not?
Well, you'll need
I
a
made a
second.
motion
I'll
to
second
cancel the order.
I'll second it. Any other discussion?
Yes, I mean, the main reason for getting a fire truck is we needed to have, as I remember, 3,500 gallons to put on a fire within the first 5 or 15 minutes or whatever. So that's the problem we're trying to solve. It's good for our businesses to keep our fire rating, was it low, the idea? And so that's what we're trying to do.
That's correct. Also, this has been in capital outlay for over 15 years, so you've seen it in every report every year since you all have been on the council that it's been going to be replaced this year. So it's not.
Maybe we
shouldn't be
should
a-
have replaced that one
shouldn't be a
instead of the ladder
surprise.
truck.
The ladder truck is very important. That is actually an engine. It's a Quint, so it's actually an engine with a ladder on top. So we use it as an engine.
And the insurance rating won't happen again for another 5 years. By then, we would
Correct.
be able to pay for that truck without
Correct.
financing it.
So
Well,
let's
if
talk.
you drive around and look at the buildings that we have, and you'd understand where the ISO comes from and what they're talking about. Reason being of having that vehicle, and also since we do not have a municipal water supply, we need a source of water to be able to put out fires. So having that extra water with the tender is very important for the future of our fire department and the city.
I'm not saying we don't need it. We have the engine too and the other truck. So I'm saying if we can wait 3 years and put the money aside so we don't finance it.
So let's
And I
look at-
think our businesses would really like to keep their rates low for what they're paying for their annual insurance stuff. Homeowners, it helps too, but it's mostly to help the businesses.
But that rate isn't going to change. We just had an ISO rating done. They won't come back for another 5 to 7 years.
Well, you'd actually like to put out the fire too, and you might need 3,500 gallons.
The one thing with ISO is not every business or insurance company uses ISO. I get 3 to 4 emails a week regarding what do you have in your fire station? How far are you away from my business? That's how they go. They don't, not every insurance company bases their insurance rates off of ISO. So it's a mixed bag. It's probably like a 60-40.
So before we finish the discussion, let's just talk about how this would look if you were to finance it. And so what I've done is I've included this in the package for our other bonds, and we do what's called bifurcating the proceeds for different purposes. That's how we're able to get a significantly lower rate than what Chip was able to get through some gap financing. In Chip's instance that he got through Community Partners, we still have to come up with the $268,000 of cash today to pay for it. That comes right out of our bank account. And so if we look at what the model would look like, and this is on page 5 of your current budget packet, the cost of the truck is $658,000. It costs a little bit of money in underwriters' fees and discounts to issue bonds. We all know that. So the total bond issue cost, the cost of the uses of funds would be about $671,625. Chip is expecting to get $139,000 for the 2 vehicles he's selling. He's confident he'll obtain that in today's dollars. There's a small contribution by the city of $2,600, which leaves us a $530,000 bond issue for the truck, because we're assuming those things would happen. We're seeing that occur. That'd be over 5 years, so you'd be looking at about a little over $120,000 a year for a levy. That would give you a way to pay for the truck in a timely manner, and your interest on that would be about $51,000. So if you're comfortable with that, and you're saying, well, let's wait till the future and buy it then, you can do that, but that $139,000 goes down to something significantly less than that. I can't tell you what the interest rate's going to be tomorrow or next week. And I can't tell you what the new truck is going to cost, because we're seeing very significant increases, double-digit increases in cost. So there's some unknowns. But from a business perspective, it makes sense to do it now because you know what the knowns are, and it's something you can easily deal with from a budget perspective.
So the cost that we're looking at is the interest cost.
You're looking at the interest cost.
So where would you get the money from, Marcia, if you don't want to take a loan out?
I want to wait till we have the money, over 3 years.
And then
Wait,
the cost,
please.
like if the cost of the truck's going up,
Yeah.
right? Well, if we take the money out, then we lose the cost of, or the growth of interest that's in there now. And today that number is going up. So the real cost of buying it is not the $51,000.
Well, you're going to lose value in what you're trading in,
Yeah.
too.
But if you take the money out, we're losing the cost of interest.
Just an
What do you
FYI,
mean?
another
Which one do you wanna have? Cash?
manufacturer sent me another quote last week, and it was $710,000 for the same truck. Same chassis, same truck, just letting you know.
Just going to cost us
Our ladder
more
truck right
money.
now, if we were to buy it, 1.25 million.
So they're saying that they would do finance for 3-4 months?
Mike, can you help me with that? I didn't read that email, but
I didn't print it out. The interest was actually a little bit more, I thought. But you still have to come up with $268,000 cash. Yeah.
The other question is how are we going to save money to get the truck paid for in another 4 years?
We're going to budget. We're going to budget for it. We're going to designate those
You're going to
funds.
put $530,000 in the levy the next 4 or 5 years?
Over 5 years, we could, yeah,
105, 105, 115, you
Sure.
probably have to add another 100 in there.
sure. You're paying 120,000 now, or proposed.
Can I ask a question? Why are we talking about planning on budgeting for it when it's been in the capital outlay for 15 years? I mean,
Well,
wouldn't you
that's
start
how
thinking
we-
about that a long time ago?
Apparently, it wasn't,
It
it
was
wasn't,
in-
the funds weren't designated for it then. Then I guess,
They weren't, because the way we paid for them is through certificates at a reasonable rate of interest. So it's really up to what the council wants to do. I mean, these are two options for you. You have a choice to make.
So we got a motion and a second out there just as a formality. Let's vote on it.
Yep, and could you read the motion again, Char? What was the motion again?
The motion is to cancel the order on the fire truck.
Can I ask one last question? Chip, does your document, because no one's considered this, how much would it cost to cancel an order we displaced?
I didn't ask that question. I don't.
I mean, what would you do if you owned the business? You got stuck with a truck that you can't cancel. It might be the whole chassis,
It is the whole
and we're
chassis.
voting on something we don't even know about here.
Well, I doubt there'd be much, because it's been a couple of days. I doubt they've built much, if anything, on it. So I question whether there'd be any
I don't
on
know.
it. But
I can't answer
you're
that.
correct. There could be, but I doubt it. But I still think we need to do our vote here.
Yeah, so all in favor of canceling the truck?
Aye.
All opposed?
Opposed, aye.
Okay, so the motion dies.
Okay, so we can cross that off the decision tree. So as far as financing goes, we have an order, now we need to pay for it. This is one option we talked about, okay? You don't have to decide that this minute. But at some point, what we'll want to do is I'll need to come forth with the resolution, a reimbursement resolution, so if you do issue these and this doesn't get approved going forward, you have the ability to do that before we cut them a check for it.
Which
So-
way is cheapest for the city to look at, whether it's bonding or financing through what Chip had talked about, or what? Which way is most cost-effective for the city?
It's most cost-effective to include it in the overall issuance we're looking at for the roads and the sewer project and the clarifiers.
So to do one bond for
To
that?
do one bond issue and bifurcate the proceeds to those different ways. So let's move on from the fire truck and talk about the sewer project, okay? So the way this was set up, and we've talked about this, was we were looking at a project cost of about a little over $2.5 million for the sewer project. We all talked about that at Public Works, council meetings, budget workshops. When we did the budget last year, we were looking at, the decision tree was, we've got about $500,000 or so dollars coming from soil and water conservation and COVID money that we can apply towards the storm sewer portion of the project and the construction of the storm water, or sewer wastewater collection system. So we said, okay, let's do that. And we have a cost share agreement with the county that's about $500,000. So at that time, the decision was, okay, we've got $2.5 million, about $500,000 of it's coming from the county. We've got $500,000 of grant money that we're gonna use for the project. We want to use bond money to pay for the contract cost, which was like 2.1. So we set up an example, and this is what you have in front of you, is a bond of about 2.1 million. And so when you do that, the thing that we're not including in there, because we'll have money from the county to pay for it, we have to talk about the engineering. And when you're looking at engineering, it's about 18 to 20% of the project cost. So in this case, this was all in the email I sent to you about 10:30 today. That's about $375,000 to $418,000 of engineering cost for that project. But the question that still needs to be answered is, does the city want to carry the county's share through bonding or use existing cash to carry the county's share through 2024? And we've talked about what that looks like. Whatever the answer is will impact the size of the bond issue and the size of the levy. So the way I've set up the bond issue was worst case scenario at the highest amount to give you the flexibility to reduce it. Either way, whatever decision you make, you can always go back and say, well, I'm going to get some money in 2024 to make the debt service on that. Because my first payment I'd be levying for would be this year. We'd put in a proposed amount, and when we know what the bond issue is and the payments are, we would adjust the final levy certification to that amount so we could make the payment in 2024. We also talked about, during those discussions, is let's figure out what the levy would look like. We know the county's going to reimburse us about $500,000. We can adjust our levy for that amount. That gives you about 2.5 years of bond payments that you wouldn't have to levy for. You could use the county's money to do that were reimbursed. So you've got some decisions to make on what you want to do. But the one thing that won't change is the amount you have to pay the contractor. You could probably expect some change orders, things like that. You'll have additional engineering because we're beyond, August, mid-August for the project. And they're working on trying to figure that out right now. So, what's your preference?
I would like to just finance the counties and get payment from them in 2024. I'd like to reduce the bond issue by the $235,000 in connections and the $564,000 in ARP and the SWCD.
And we've already done that. We've already reduced the bond issue by that amount.
And we're still sitting at 2.5.
And the project cost is about a little over 2.5. If we reduce the bond issue by what Marcia suggested, that gets you down to about 2.1.
So you're starting out at 2.5
Yes,
instead of the 2.1.
Yep, and that's what we talked about. We have to look at the entire project.
In my understanding, the main thing that happens if we don't bond for it is we are using our cash reserves, at least temporarily, for a couple of years.
Yes, you'll do that. We'll use city money for that time. And then what you can do is, let's just look at the repayment stream on that.
So the engineering is $500,000? Is that what you're calculating, 500,000?
Between 375 and 420, that's correct. And we've got some change orders in there too. We don't have the final amounts on. The county's change order will be a wash. We'll get a change order for the curbing and extra gutter and stuff like that, and we'll just pay it and they'll pay us right back. So the other thing, when we looked at this, so what this shows is 2.1 million for the sewer extension, 566,000 in bonding for the clarifiers. And then we also talked about, we received a bunch of connection charges, and we can use those for, the clarifier project. We got about $250,000 in connection charges through today. So these are just rounding differences. So your bond issue would be 2.66, whoops. You'd have some issuance costs, the total size of 2.7. The bond issue would be made up of 2,475,000. You'd have your connection charges that would come off to a net to get to your uses of funds. So the bond would be 2,475,000 for a combination of the clarifiers and the sewer and road extension project.
So the clarifiers contract was 447,600,
Yep, and we had 97,000 of engineering,
97?
roughly $100,000, yep.
Mike, what are the issues if we pay out cash that we have in the bank in terms of future interest rates that we can get for bonds or whatever? Is it going to be material or not?
It could be.
But we don't know.
If you show that you're spending down your reserves, you know, that's a behavioral question that the raters would look at.
Thanks.
How they would rate that remains to be seen. They mostly look at your tax base and your ability to pay for what you've borrowed. Can you make the payments on time? And do you have the ability to do that?
Do you know what the interest rate is on the bond you're looking at?
Yes, we talked about that earlier.
3.5?
The net effective interest rate in this model is on page 2 of your document. It's,
That's the combined, sorry,
yeah,
that's combining all of these expenditures into one
Yep.
large. So it's the average of these. Thought you said 3.1?
Average is 3.4.
it's 3.5.
Yeah,
And the average
3.5.
coupon rate on the bonds is 3.4. So we're about a 0.75% difference from what CHIP is.
And what are we earning on our funds that are sitting in the market?
A little over 2%.
A little over 2?
Yeah, not much.
So if that has any impact.
Percentage of worth it to take the gamble that we could lose some of our bonding ability.
And if you remember about 3 or 4 years ago when we started this whole project, we were looking at a 0.8% interest rate.
Right.
The whole thing is we don't know where this country's going anyway, so
No, you're right about that.
we might be,
Well, either way, if you bonded for the whole thing and we
That
set it up so
over-
when the county paid us in 2 years, they're $500,000 that'd come off the bond and pay it down,
Well, it'd come
right?
off the levy.
Correct,
It'd come off your levy for it. You'd put the money into
Right, but I
debt
mean-
service.
So as long as
But
that
either way, you've got to pay for the whole project.
goes to there.
We're talking today is how we're going to pay for it.
And in 2 years, I don't think we're going to get this kind of interest rate on bonding.
I agree with you, Aaron.
Yeah. And it isn't that bad.
Retail for housing now has hit 6.
So you're just saying bond for the whole thing?
Yep, right there.
the whole thing is too, is that we, our union contracts, the employees got a 14.5% raise increase across the board, and we only budgeted for, in 2022, for 7.5%. We gotta look at that. It's an additional $230,000 that we're adding to our levy. I mean, where's it gonna end? Where are you gonna stop with all the spending? Where are you gonna stop?
Once again, Marcia, we're paying for the services that we think Cross Lake citizens expect and want and deserve.
So what are you looking for out of us?
Well, I'm
Which way
giving
to
you some
go?
options.
You looking for a motion on it though, or just
Well,
a?
we'll get to that in a minute here. What I'm looking for, I mean, this is just part of the whole package.
Right.
What I've put forth in front of you, and we'll talk about that when we get into the details of the budget packet, is I put it at the higher amount so that if you change your mind between now and the final certification, you can do that. One thing I do know is, I got a phone call just before this meeting I'm confident we can lower the bond issue by $35,000. The reason I say that is that's my good news. We're skipping ahead just a little bit. But I've been working with Soil and Water Conservation. If you remember when we did the stormwater pond, we got to the end of the project and I called Soil and Water Conservation and said, look, we're paying more for the project than we wanted to. Is there any other funding available? Well, we got some money from APO, we got some money from Pine River Watershed, we got some money from Soil and Water Conservation. We ended up getting about $40,000 we didn't have in the original plan for that project. And everyone was happy, and that was a good thing. So we're doing this project, and because we're getting some funding from Soil and Water Conservation, if you remember, the stormwater ponds were $500,000 or $600,000 item in the budget. We knew up front that we were going to have a large local share with the cost share agreement. So about a week ago, I got a call from Melissa Barrick on this, and they said, how much money do you have from other projects that you need to send our way? She came up with $35,000 that she'll be going to the board next week to approve on our behalf. So you'll be getting in front of you an amendment to the memorandum of understanding we've already signed with Soil and Water Conservation for that amount. Now, on July 1st, some other funds became available, and we're determining whether or not we're eligible for those funds or not. So the argument is because we're improving water quality, we should be eligible for those funds. The argument against it is, yeah, you might be improving water quality, but this is for new projects. You've got a project that's already underway. So we're trying to figure out if we can ask them to sharpen the pencil a little bit and push some more funding our way. How much that is, I don't know, but it would be at least $35,000, I know that. But for now, we should be getting another $35,000 to put towards our sewer portion of the project, in addition to the $315 we already got.
Nice. Nice, thanks.
So we'll get that.
So did you take the $235,000 for sewer connections out of the bond issue?
Yes, and I replied to you as such. What I did was I took out 250, 320, because through today, that's how much we've received, so I took all of it. When we first started talking about this.
But I don't see the bond issue changing.
Okay, well, let's address that. And to do that, we'll need to move to
Page 4.
page 4 of your budget packet. And this is what we talked about when I went through the combined bond issue for the road improvement project, which is the sewer extension, which is the second number. The clarifier is 566. We're doing some rounding here to make the math work. This city contribution right here represents, that includes the $250,000 of connection charges that we're not bonding for.
You're talking about down under sources of funds.
Yep, I'm looking at where's the money coming from.
Okay.
$2,475,000 is from bonds, and we plugged the difference essentially, knowing that we needed to be around $250,000, and that's what our connections are, 250, 320 through today.
So I have a question on maybe additional funds here, changes. So you talked about additional engineering costs, which we don't know what they might be, right?
Well, there'll be some observation, because we know we'll have
Right.
another 30 days
That
of
isn't
that.
funds in our pocket. We have to pay for that.
We're gonna have to pay for that,
How
yep.
about the county change orders? Are they gonna pay us cash before the end of the year?
Yes.
Or shortly thereafter, yes.
Okay, and any idea how much that is?
It's about 150,000,
Oh, it is?
yeah.
All right. So how about that yet to be argued about penalty fee? Isn't that about 30 days at $2,200? That's $66,000. Are we gonna see that or a portion of it?
We don't know when we'd see that or
But
how
there
much
could
it'll
be
be.
something.
It's possible, yep.
Right. So there's some more money that if we,
We could also end up in court and net to zero on that too.
really, I have faith in you.
Well, we just wouldn't pay. We wouldn't pay the last pay estimate until that's all resolved. I would hope that we would keep the penalty and retainage.
The thing with penalties is, those are negotiated items in most cases like this. They're not certain.
I realize that, but you wouldn't pay, if those penalties are there, you wouldn't pay the balance.
No, we
You would
wouldn't.
retain
That's
that
correct.
penalties. That's what I'm saying, is that you're not going to get a check.
No.
Your contract is just going to be reduced.
I mean, we'd still be on the hook for the amount we contracted. The penalty is a separately addressed issue.
So there,
Like, we need $2,726,000 to pay the bills.
right,
We've got $251,000 that's coming out of city shared, which is the connection fees and so on and so forth.
Yep.
And then, so in order to bond, we actually have to come up with $2,475,000 on a bond.
For the sewer portion of the project.
That's the sewer
correct. That's
portion
just
of the
sewer.
project only.
Now, one thing I did, based on the vote, the council vote from the 14th of this month, what I did is I took the assessments out, because we were looking at, and I'll show you what, for the road projects. That's on page 3. So on the road project, we were looking at about $35,000 of assessments every year. 37. I just moved that from assessment to levy, and that's reflected in the current model.
But Mike, the assessment came out a 2-2 vote, correct?
Yep,
So unless there's some kind of a new vote or a change in this, shouldn't we be going back to our ordinance, and our ordinance should be applied?
yes.
Okay, so why would we take out the assessments then on this 800,000, because they should be collected?
I gave you worst-case scenario for bond, for levy purposes.
No,
Yep.
and I appreciate that, Mike, but
No, I agree with the logic, but this was a different bond, remember? Because this was a council-directed project, and we needed a 4/5 vote to move forward, and then after that, you need a simple majority to certify the assessment roll.
okay,
Yeah, and that's a policy decision. I mean, the question comes up is how are we going to do assessment projects in the future under 429? Well, you'd do them the same way. You would, like you did this one.
Can we do it, can we finance it under 429? We have to have 20% assessment.
And that's what the proposal is set up to do.
I know, but if we don't assess, we can't do that.
Right.
Because we can only bond under for the disposal or the sewer. We can only bond for that without assessments. Right? We can't bond road projects without assessment,
Not under that
20%.
statute. You'd have to do it under another one.
So this bond issue is set up through the 429,
It is.
then the assessment's got to be there. I don't know why we're voting.
Well, again, I'm just bringing it up so you can see what the worst case might look like. I mean, you can bring up the assessment issue at a later date, too.
But aren't we trying to get the bond issue done before the interest rates go even higher?
Correct.
Okay, so I think we need to step up to the plate.
Well, then that would hold true for the fire truck financing, too.
That's equipment certificates?
That's correct.
Okay. So you don't need us to,
But this is the best rate you'll get for that.
okay, so let's go back to the road improvements. What are we actually going to bond, or what we can legally bond, and go from there?
well, unless we assess 20% of the road project, you can't bond the road project.
So 20% of 820 is 160? I mean, round number?
Well, we were looking at the road project when we had the assessment hearing, the assessment for the total cost of all the road projects. It was more on some than others because they were different projects.
Yeah.
And the whole idea of how we did it under our ordinance was that we used an appraisal, which we did. We got the appraisal, and we came back and said, here's the range. And the council said, here's the number we're picking within that range, and it was $4,000, and it was like $2,000 for a lot that wasn't directly hooked on it, but was benefited from the use of that road, correct? Is what we did. And so then on the 14th, when we brought the assessment hearing, what we're really doing, and again, we still have to pay for the project, whether you bond for it or you get some of that back from assessments, you just shifted, by not assessing, the amount not assessed was shifted over to those not directly on the project. So either way, it's the same number you gotta write a check out for. It's just, how are you gonna pay for it?
But I'm looking at this, and that 820,000 for those roads, Marcia says 20%, okay, that's 164,000. You take that away from the 820, you had 656,000. So I would say we should be able to bond for 656,000 and collect the other fees.
Well, we're talking two different things. We need the cash to pay for the project,
Yep,
which is fixed. And now what you're looking at, the only thing you'd be changing is the amount you'd levy because you're assessing a portion of it. In this model, the required levy is $73,000. And the assessment is 37. That's at the recommended amount. But if you change the total amount you're assessing, so if you change it from like $4,000 to $3,000, we'd redo this. If you're reducing the assessments by that percentage, then you're assessing less than you typically would on other projects in the past. You've been at about half. This is close to half.
so you're saying this is to bond to pay the bills?
Yep. This
The
is to pay
engineering's in
bonds.
there, not the road project is 680,000, the contract. I would assume that,
Yeah, yeah, okay. Now I'm straight on that, thank you.
Yeah, so we've
I
got,
think-
the amount that we have to pay doesn't change. It's just how are we going to pay back what we issued debt to finance.
Yeah.
And we still have yet to get the bills for the chip sealing and the crack sealing. We should see those soon from the county.
we budgeted for that, though,
We did, yep.
so that's not going in the bond issue.
No,
Yeah, so you bring it up, sounds like it's going in the bond issue, it's not.
nope, not in this model.
Okay.
And we'll
What's the-
adjust these numbers down.
What's the next
whichever way
part
they
of the
need.
bond then? Or is that it?
That's
for this
really
bond?
it. If you go to the first page of that document, which would be page 2 of your packet, the most recent packet, you know, you've got all the pieces right in there.
Okay,
And so the total bond issue would be $3,825,000. And I'm looking under sources of funds here, down here. You'd have $392,000 of local contribution. Most of that is connection charges and whatever assessments we collect. And the details are on the following 3 pages, what each one of those models would look like. So again, what I built into this package was those higher numbers. And when we decide what we're going to do, we'll run this again and hopefully they'll go down. I know it'll go down by $35,000. We know that today. So, do you want to think about it?
no, I think we need to move forward or have,
I think, yeah, I think we should take the $500,000 out that the county's got to pay us and the $35,000.
and then in bond for how much? I mean, that's the dollar figure I'm looking
Well,
at.
if you're taking the $500,000 the county's going to pay us, then you're going to carry what the county is going to pay us back, and you'll have a levy for it.
Do we have effectively the amount of money to do without affecting our bond rating?
Can't we take it out of the reserve for 2 years? Put it on the balance sheet, do from other governments?
And that's what we'll do when the project is
Okay, so we
done.
don't have to levy the $500,000 for it.
But the question is, do you want to carry that money? Or do you want to levy for it and use the amount that you're getting back from them? If you don't do that, you've got less money to work with. We'll need to rerun these.
Well, it'll be on the balance sheet. It'll be out of the reserve.
Well,
Well,
How much cash do we have today, roughly?
you have enough to cover this.
2, 2.5 in total?
Left out of the, if you're looking at what's
believe-
left out of the sale of the phone company,
The 6 to 7 million?
that was 5.8 million. We've spent it down to about 2.1.
In unrestricted cash, we have $6,396,000.
That's fund balance, which is not cash.
Well,
So you've
It's
got
there.
enough money to carry it, is
Yes.
the point. So if you want to reduce the bond issue, give me direction and we'll reduce it.
I'll go along with Marcia to reduce the bond issue.
By how much?
500. What the county is.
what the county owes us and the 35,000.
2 years.
Okay, which is to be determined because of change orders. So is 500 a good number for you?
no more.
Okay. Everyone's okay with 500?
Yep, I'm okay with it.
And where does that going to basically drop us to? That's what.
Well,
that's
then your
what's
bond
keeping me
issue will
on
be
point.
$500,000 less.
I'm sorry, what?
Your bond issue will be $500,000 less.
Well, okay, so instead of 4,
So the total bond issue, take $500,000 off it, that would be,
3.3.
3.3. Okay,
Okay.
that's what I'm,
so I can run these again to get new numbers to know what the
if you
levy
would,
looks like.
please. But-
So when we'll get paid in 2 years, a rough amount equal to that? And then we're just putting that back in the
In the reserve,
reserves?
where we took it from.
Fund account.
Is that part of the motion?
Yeah. Should be.
Was that a motion, or was that just,
I don't think it was a motion.
So why don't you make your motion to reduce the bond issue by 500,000 for this
I'll
project?
make
Let's
a
do that.
motion that we reduce the bond issue by $500,000.
And it will be replenished in 2 years when the county pays us back.
And put back into the fund?
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, you still have a decision to make on what the levy looks like for that same bond issue, because now you need to levy for it, because you're carrying the county's money, okay? So
Well,
let me-
we're not going to levy that 500,000. We're not.
Okay, so there's a motion to reduce it by 500 and repay it when the county pays us back.
Put it back in the reserve
Who's going to
when the
second
county
that?
pays it back.
You got that, Chair? You could, huh? You got that? That motion?
Can you read it back, please?
to reduce the bond by $500,000 and replenish the reserve in 2 years when the county pays us back? Do we have a second?
I'll second it. Okay, any other discussion on it?
Sure. Just trying to get a little more exact here. Where's the page 2? So we're going to take that number,
3825.
You're going to take the 2.1 down to 1.6.
right? That's right. And then the total costs that we're putting on there are going to go down to 3,325,000 or thereabouts, right? Probably
Sure.
there's going to be
We'll
some
have to run
different
this
fees.
again.
The percentages might futz with the numbers a little.
Sure. So you've made the decision point to reduce the bond issue by 500,000. So now we need to address the special assessment issue, because that impacts what you levy.
I think we have to vote
Yep.
on this first part.
Yeah, let's
So
vote.
vote
it.
on that.
So, any other discussion? You good, Dave?
No, I'm good.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries all in favor.
Okay, and I'll have a new schedule run that reflects that decision, okay?
Thank you.
So what do you want to do with the two of the other items, one of which is assessments, and the other is the fire truck?
Let me make a comment on the assessments, which is why I voted the way I did the other night. We had one person who said, I have 33 feet of road access, and I got $4,000 assessment. Seems to me that our assessment process is flawed. It's not fair to everybody, hence how I voted. Once again, how I voted is different than the policy we had existing. But I'm sitting there saying, 33 feet and you're getting $4,000 assessment. We had people say they've been to talk to Crow Wing, who said there's no increase in house value by me having a road redone. And I'm listening to all that, and then I'm saying, how can we say there's 4,000 improvement when we're getting, 33 feet, or we're getting people saying, well, the county says there's no extra advantage to us. So that was the part that bothered me. Although I agree I voted differently than the policy we've already had.
So the 33, just to comment to that, it's one access point off of the road, whether it's 120 feet or 33 feet. So you still got a driveway off the road. I mean, that's part of it. Tom, do you want to throw something into this? Yeah. If we're going to try to act on this assessment, we should hear about it.
Tom Swenson, and I'll talk as chairman of the Public Works Commission. The way they've done assessments in the past is like Dave said, not the front foot, but the
Access.
equivalent lot is what we're looking at. Everyone that has access to that road, it's the same thing where in the past I've heard people say, well, I only drive on the first 100 feet of the road. Why do I have to pay for the road that goes a half a mile down the road? Once you're on the road, you use that road and it's in front of your property, whether it's 33 feet or 150 feet. The one thing I'll say about the hearing the other night, the one person on, I think it was Rushmore, where it comes up and the county said that they could access off the county road. You may want to think about that one, where maybe he gets one for Rushmore and a half of one for the other, because he still has access off there, but not a full one. But I'm really concerned with the motion that was made the other night and how that's going to carry forward for future projects. We've got 60 miles of roads, and most of them are coming to that 20 to 30 year end of life. And to put all this on the tax rolls, this is just an example. You're going to start adding 37,000 a year for the next, 15 years. You're going to hear people screaming at the Truth and Taxation hearing. You're going to pay for it one way or the other, and for the people that actually benefit, the roads in front of their house, they should have some skin in the game. And Marcia said she's been at 40 years worth of these. I was at 33 years worth of assessment hearings. It's the same thing, well, I talked to the county or whoever, and there's not that benefit. There is that benefit, and if you go down this road of not assessing, I don't know how you're going to deal with road projects in the future, because look at Big Pine Trail. Because they had some skin in the game, all of a sudden that road, we can get by with that road for more years. If the city was just going to pay for it, why wouldn't you? Wouldn't you want a new road? Well, if it comes out that you're not going to assess for roads anymore, you're going to have everyone in here saying, well, my road should be next on the list, and I don't even know how you're going to do that. Where the commission was going with this is try to spend money currently to save the roads we can, and the ones that are really getting shot, let them go until the people come in and petition for them, and then they've got skin in the game and they get assessed for it. But for the city to just say from now on, we're gonna take over all roads, I don't know how the process is gonna even be handled, much less how you're gonna pay for it.
Tom, am I correct that Brainerd does not assess for roads?
I don't know if they do or not.
Well, what I heard from Tim Bray was that Brainerd, we don't assess for roads, we just cover it. I will comment that I actually live on a road that was not assessed, Manhattan Point Boulevard, same thing with Anchor Point. Both of those were very sweet, very easily done. I have spent hours and hours and hours talking about assessments for roads of time, you can say wasted or not wasted. We've had engineer money, lawyer money. It just seems to me that it's real messy trying to do assessments. Once again, we're going to pay for it one way or the other.
Yep. That was after I retired and before I came back on Public Works that they did those roads. And if I would have been here, I would have been saying, what are you doing? We've been assessing for roads all along, and now all of a sudden we're going to do these roads and not assess? And as far as I'm concerned, whether it was the commission, the staff, or the council, that was a dumb move on the city's part when they did that.
Didn't you assess because there wasn't no asphalt, there was dirt roads, that's when the graders went away.
Yeah,
So you assessed, people paid for road number one.
yeah.
And I remember Mark Wessel saying that there was a commitment made at the time that once we do this, the city will take over. I mean, I've heard that. I'm just
Yeah.
stating what I.
Do you admit that?
I do admit that, and I cringed every time, but I was here for 15 years, and there were different councils, and when you've got a group out there yelling at you, just like you guys had the other night, people make statements, stupid statements like that, oh no, if go along with this and then we'll take it over forever. And I cringed every time a councilman said that because I knew this day would come that 20 years later, the roads are starting to crumble and.
They're all gone.
Yeah.
Well, we used to always assess running foot, the cost of the project and a running foot. And if you had 50-foot lot, you got assessed the cost per foot for a 50-foot lot. You had a 100-foot lot, you got assessed that way. And then if you're not going to assess anymore, question about no maintenance roads, they're paying for all the roads in town, plus they're maintaining their own road. And that's costly too. So you're expecting some taxpayers to take care of their own road, plus pay for all the roads in town. Are you going to have the no maintenance roads anymore then? Are you going to pick that up? Otherwise, assess and let them pay them $4,000 over 15 years. I'm sorry.
Got homeowners struggling, especially senior citizens, to make their payments. And that's not fair either.
And isn't
Put more
Route
of a-
66 a no-pay road? Wasn't
That's a
66
county
paid
road.
for by the county? So we didn't pay for 66.
No, that's the 500,000.
Thanks.
One thing I did hear at that meeting, one lady, and I didn't understand it, but everybody was so mad I didn't ask, okay. She said that the road, our end of the work ended at a certain point, and they had to come back and get Anderson Brothers to come back and pay for 3 lots or 3 driveways or something. And they paid for it. City didn't, and so she didn't feel it was fair that we were putting an assessment on her. If that's true, I would agree with her.
I had no idea on
but-
that one.
That was at the end of Birch Narrows. The
Okay.
road does end and it turns to gravel,
Yep,
and we assess those property owners $2,000.
50%.
They did have to come and have Anderson Brothers fix something,
yeah. Well, she said they put blacktop down,
right,
so,
but they
But
asked,
that was their choice
Yeah.
because we could only blacktop what's in the right-of-way once it went on private property.
There, I get you.
But that's a classic example of what I said earlier, where, people would say, I only drive on the first 100 feet of the road. Those people have to drive 2 miles on, or whatever Birch Narrows is. That's their access to their property. Where the city right-of-way ends, you don't think that they should be, participate? They use
But-
the
but
most
it was-
road of anybody.
It was right at the, a lower assessment because they
Yeah.
need the road to get there.
Yeah.
And all those projects, it's the people that live on that road, they don't go through to anywhere. They end, and then you turn around and you come back out. So it's basically the residents that are using it.
And I don't buy the argument that,
Well,
if you have a new paved road in front of your house versus one, Dave, your road's a classic example. When you're like that and the road's busting up, you think it'd be easier to sell your house on that road or with your new fresh blacktop? Yeah, the realtors will say, oh no, it doesn't make a difference. But when people drive down that road to go look at your house, they're looking at a road like this or they're looking at a nice new road. So I don't buy the argument that there's no benefit to people when they get a new road. I'll have other comments later, but.
So we're back to, we can't bond unless we assess anyway.
You can still get a bond.
We can still get a bond. We just
Not the
have to-
road portion.
We'd have to confirm that. But just to touch base on a couple comments that were made with respect to the assessment policy. My understanding of the reason the city moved away from a lineal foot process was because show me 2 lots in Cross Lake that are the same. They're not. We're not mapped out in a square grid someplace where every block is the same and every street's the same width. Not many of our streets are straight, and not many of our lots are the same size. So they came up with this equivalent lot concept and said, well, you have a lot that's equivalent to build a house on, here's your assessment. The way the statute reads is you've got to, if you assess me $1, you've got to show me that I got $1 of benefit. That's really hard to do. And what happens is if you assess somebody a small amount, they're not going to contest it because it'll cost more to contest it than what the assessment probably was. So the next methodology that cities were using was to say, let's get an appraisal and come up with the range based on certain factors. And it really doesn't matter where the appraiser lives or is from or where the firm does their work. They follow the same standards all appraisers do, and they're certified. And they came back with the range. And the appraiser said, here's our range. It's between this number, a low number, and a high number. We can support that in court, and we think it'll stand up if we're challenged. Where you run into problems with an appraisal is if you don't follow their advice and you pick a higher number, or you pick a number that's below the minimum amount, and they say, well, it should have been lower. Well, now you've already disagreed with the work you paid for that you agreed to do. So you come up with this concept of a range, and so you pick somewhere below the midpoint of that range, and that's how you came up with the $4,000, and that's how the methodology came up with a lot, like Tom mentioned, you get a half amount because you're not on the road, but you benefited from it. So it's kind of come full circle on that. So what the council needs to decide is if you still want to follow that policy or not. But when I hear comments, well, I live on Anchor Point Road and I didn't get assessed, or I live on Manhattan, I didn't get assessed. Well, if you remember what we were doing at that time is the city was setting aside money for road projects and then changing their mind and not doing them. A couple different ones come to mind, Wildwind Ranch, and a couple other ones. And so we levied for projects to do roads that we didn't know what we were doing yet, and we collected funds for that. So instead of bonding for those roads or doing some other thing, we already had the money to pay for most of it. So when the options were presented to the council, they could either assess or you could just pay for it, or you could do a bond or a combination of both. The council's demeanor at that time was, well, if we've got the money and we didn't spend it on this road project, let's just pay for the next one. And that's really what happened. In one case, we were a little short, so we bonded for it, knowing full well what we were doing. Well, now we've kind of come full circle, and I think Marcia said it best at the assessment hearing. Nobody comes to a meeting and says, assess me.
Not in 40 years, I'm sorry, not once, because the people that don't care don't come.
The other side of that coin is people generally don't, my experience has been, when people come into an assessment hearing, they're coming to say, don't assess me. The people that aren't getting assessed aren't showing up to say, assess these people because I don't want to pay for their road. I'm okay with paying for a part of it under your policy, but not the whole thing. Those folks don't show up. Only the folks that show up are what Marcia referred to.
And they show up every time.
I think we need to just have him check and see if we can bond without assessments, and that's a huge piece of this. If we can't, then at the regular meeting, we'll need to address the assessment issue.
Yep.
I don't think it's fair to the people that were at the assessment hearing, and they're all against it, to have us pass it now, as much as we want to just get it behind us. I think find out and give us a bond schedule accordingly to if we can or we can't.
Okay. Well, our next council meeting is after the deadline for certifying a preliminary assessment. So we're going to need to have another budget meeting. And then
Okay,
you're going to need to
that's
certify a
fine.
preliminary levy like
Don't you have
next
to
week.
have an assessment hearing again?
We
No,
already had the assessment hearing.
Yeah.
It's time to
So
decide
then you
now.
can just have nobody in here and then call a meeting?
we complied with the law. We had an assessment hearing. We heard what they had to say.
Yep.
Now we take action.
So my direction from this meeting is, number one, reduce the one by 500,000 and confirm whether or not what statute we have to issue the bonds if we don't assess. Is that understood?
Yes.
Okay,
Okay, so
what's left?
I have stuff.
Well, no, I don't think we're done with the assessments.
that's the only thing you're
Yeah.
assessing.
That's the
can't
only
do
thing
nothing.
left? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Marcia, do your questions relate to the budget packet, or can we start
Budget.
going? Okay.
Budget.
Okay, before we go into that, can we set the date for the next meeting?
Let's do that. If you want to set it for a week from today, that would give me an opportunity to work with our,
Week from today, on a Monday, I will not be here.
okay,
I will get home, I hope, Wednesday.
Wednesday, okay?
I hope I get home that day. I mean, we're on vacation in Georgia, so.
Okay. Do you want to try to set it for Thursday of this week?
Of this week?
Not this week,
Or
because I leave.
Thursday of next week? What's the date of next week? That's really cutting it close for me, 29th.
I need to see a calendar. Dave's got one.
The 30th is on a Friday.
Mike, am I right that the lady that, I think we had her on Zoom, gave us a discussion multiple weeks ago, and she said there was a way to do the roads without assessing. I think she
Right, and you
answered
have
your
your
question.
4/5 vote.
I think she answered your
Yeah.
question, though, that we didn't have to assess to do the roads. I'm not
Right,
picking
but that
sides
changes
here.
the
I think
stat-
that was Mary Ipple, and that was the sewer portion of it. Didn't need to be assessed because that's under a different statute.
Yep, and we'd have to see what the ramifications are
Okay,
under this.
thank you.
Just, I'm certain we can do the same things, we just need to confirm that.
I'm leaving the 22nd, and I'm hoping to be home on the 27th.
Is there any way you could zoom in?
Well,
Zoom?
can we not
From-
adjourn and
from on the
recess
highway?
this?
If we're
till
going to have
tomorrow?
another meeting that's sort of like this, why don't we just go ahead and make a decision to assess and be done with it?
I'll just put the kid behind the wheel. But
Why couldn't we agree to assess today if we're going to just have a meeting in a week? Same concept. I'm willing to say that, I'll go with the assessment process.
Okay, and you can do that.
Besides, we have all five of us
I
here
can try
today.
to zoom in on the 26th.
You're going to have a lot of PO'd people at you by doing that. in the meeting.
You're right. But I'll have the same people if we meet on the 29th.
Yeah, but I don't think you open up form and let them just keep pouring up there and back and forth and up multiple times.
You're not having another assessment hearing. You're making your decision.
You're making a decision.
So you close off the open forum. I can try to zoom in, Mike, on the 26th. But I will be on the highway literally, and I don't know how, I'll
Yeah,
have to
that's
try and
probably
figure
not
out how
gonna
that
work.
works. My daughter would know more about it than me.
You're going to be back on the 30th?
I'll be back on the 28th.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm in the wrong month.
Well, you could,
On the
I'm hoping
28th?
to get home on the 27th, okay.
Well, then there's time, the 28th,
yeah.
to do the assessment thing.
On the 28th, I'll just tell them I got to be here.
I don't know.
I'll be grumpy,
You'll be
a
grumpy.
lot of miles.
So will I.
So should I take PO'd people and we can make a decision today and you can still meet on the 28th or whatever? I mean, this is just another meeting on the topic,
Yeah.
probably number 20.
I agree with you, John.
Why don't I make a move that we go ahead and assess per our policy?
As shown here,
Pardon?
as shown in the bond document.
Show in the bond document.
I don't know if that needs to be noticed.
It should be noticed, that
Not
decision.
that there needs to be any public input, Mr. Mayor, at that meeting, but it should be noticed
That you're going to decide.
that you're going to make a decision, I think.
I think so too.
Okay.
But I don't think, it
didn't notice
absolutely
that
should not be a
decision today.
public hearing,
Correct.
but that's up to the council.
So here's a couple things you could do then. You could do it on the 28th, right?
Yeah, I'll
you
go
could
for the
certify your
28th, but
preliminary
make
levy
it
on the
later in the
28th.
day. So if we are still driving for some reason, I can,
And then I'll have a new schedule for you, adjusted for the 500,000, like we talked about.
and I'll try and read it while I'm on the highway if I can connect.
Time,
Later in the day if we can.
6?
Whatever, you guys said it, I'm just saying later.
So we're gonna do more than just that.
We're going to certify the preliminary levy, or
We get
by
to the end of the
default,
month.
we get last year's levy.
Got to do that.
I mean, we have to do this.
7 PM? 6?
It's up to you
Are
guys.
we talking on the 28th?
4:30,
28th. 4:30? Well,
4 o'clock? It should be a short meeting.
I don't care.
4 o'clock on the 28th?
okay.
4 o'clock?
4 o'clock.
Oh, 4 o'clock. I thought
Yep,
4:30.
and I agree with the comments. You should announce it, that we'll post an agenda for that. We're not going to take out an ad and say, hey, we're deciding assessments. We'll post the agenda and send it out like we always do. But I would encourage you not to take additional public comment, because you don't want another hearing, because you've already had that.
We've already
It's
had,
time to decide. Okay, we good to go?
Are you going to the budget packet now?
We're going to go with the budget packet now.
Okay.
And we're going to skip the first, hang on. We're going to skip the first 8 pages and start on page 9. Because we've already talked about everything on the first 8 pages at length. So page 9 will change a little bit when we know what the new levy numbers would be for reducing it by 500,000. So you can make a decision and what you're going to do on levy. Go ahead, Marcia.
So you're on page 9.
I'm on page 9.
I guess I would like to discuss this fully loaded, unloaded. Basically, what it is 2 full-time employees on there,
That's right.
right? I'm thinking, we added 230,000 to our wages and benefits package this year, and it's going to go up another 3% next year. I really think that we should step back and not have a full-time clerical person added to the budget, nor consider a full-time fire chief. That would save us close to $100,000 out of the budget. We need to start addressing some of these expenditures. And when we start talking about a full-time position, we're talking union benefits, insurance. You have $57,000 in there for clerical, and then another $25,000, and you got.
Well, before you get too far with that, let's go to page 13 then, because I've reflected the
Well,
impact.
I would like to take those out of the budget.
So go to page 13, and let's go to the bottom of that page, and I'll put it up on the overhead. So because of the decisions we've already made with respect to buying the fire truck, bonding, assessments, things like that, the only thing left to really discuss, now I don't have the assessments in here. So if you decide at your next meeting to assess at the recommended amount, that's about $40,000 off your levy, okay? Because it would change from assessment to levy, or from levy to assessment. Right now, there's no assessments for the road projects. It's all sitting in levy because you still have to pay for the project, whether you levy for it or you have assessments. You still have to pay the bonds back. So on the bottom of here, the only thing left in there is if you take out the items that we haven't already talked about, and the two items we haven't talked about are the addition of headcount. And so if you take out a clerical, that would be split between PD, fire, and admin. A fully loaded cost for a competent person. I mean, if you're thinking you're gonna get somebody for 15 or 18 bucks an hour to do that kind of work, good luck. It's not gonna happen. You're gonna have a competent person and pay them to do the work. And that means full-time. That's about $92,000 when you figure in a complete package. Now, whether or not they take a complete package as an employee remains to be seen. We talked earlier about the cost of a health insurance policy. At the beginning of the discussion, that's included in that number. Healthcare savings account, that's included in that number. When we look at the incremental impact of a full-time fire chief, what I've done is I've shifted that person from the paid-on-call people and reduced it by that amount to a full-time fire chief at an appropriate rate. Just for reference, a full-time fire chief, most of them that we were able to find are in the 85-plus range, even for a small city like ours, based on what you're asking them to do. And there's a good article in the city's magazine on what those responsibilities would include. If you don't have a full-time fire chief, then you don't need an upgraded vehicle for that person. And what I've listed in there is the net cost of that vehicle. A Chevy Tahoe just doesn't have the room in it to carry the equipment, supplies, and materials that would necessitate the level of inspections you'd be asking that person to do. So you'd need to upgrade the vehicle. That's the net cost. If you take all of those items out, it's 2.25.
I'll make a motion that we take the $225,348 out of the budget.
Okay, I'll second that with some discussion. Mike, on the full-time fire chief, 83,860, do you have benefits with that?
And what I just mentioned was I took out the cost, that's a net number. Because we already have some of the costs in there. If you don't have a full-time fire chief, I just took the incremental increase. So let's say I had somebody in one category as a paid-on-call for $10,000, but I needed $90,000 to pay a fire chief, I just added 80. That's what the 83,860 reflects, is that incremental increase.
But if you add the full insurance package and the benefit package like a regular employee has, it's more than $10,000.
Oh, yeah.
Right, it's 83,860, it's the incremental increase.
So what is
Adding that
the salary or the wage for that individual then?
The wage would be in that 85-plus range.
So he's already getting some, the fire chief position is already getting.
The fire chief position is already getting paid.
What is it? What's the payment?
It's $14,400 a year. And then when you add in the hourly and the training and everything, it comes to about $40,000.
Okay, 40,000.
So we're adding the benefit to that. So, I mean, you wouldn't hire, the point is, if you're going to hire somebody, you want someone that can still lead the department. The thing
I think
that
we
you're
ought to
giving up-
consider, though, some extra clerical help for police, fire, and for SHAR. I just think it's incredible what we're trying to get done with,
Two people.
with no clerical people in the fire, no clerical people in police, and SHAR doing the rest of our stuff. I think I want to keep the money down, but I also want the services.
Well, we gave them 14.5% increase. I guess I'm thinking that we gave them a considerable increase and the work should get done. They'll just have to prioritize what they should do one day, and that's the way it is.
Yeah. Couple of questions on my
It
part.
doesn't work that way, Marcia, and you know
Chip.
that.
I do too.
No, you don't.
Chip, to your paperwork, is there any certifications, qualifications for the person that has to do that?
They should have a background in fire, but there's no actual certification.
But there's no actual
Privacy
certification?
Act, stuff like that. But it's just similar to police. You gotta do the run sheets for every call, and
Eric, what
his
is
is different.
what is
His
the
is-
certification at your end?
That person would end up most likely being the terminal agency coordinator, and they'd have to go through training online and in-person training.
The training online is a 40-hour course. Used to be.
Yeah, give or take.
Yeah, it used to be. That was, if you made them the, handling it for the MDTs, accesses, all that, then it goes up.
Right. And it'd be, like I said, a lot of it would be online training. There'd be probably quarterly TAC training that they'd have to go to, terminal agency coordinator
Yeah.
training, and that person would be in charge of a whole host of responsibilities that would free up my time to get out of the office. And right now, and I don't like to necessarily compare myself to other departments. I'm the only agency without a full-time clerical staff with an agency our size. We are handcuffed in what Jake and I can do right now. And most of our time, I'd say 3/4 of my time is spent in the office. And I don't know if that's really what you want as a council. And probably 1/3 to half the time is the sergeant's time in the office. I don't know how that would, I know Shar needs some help on her side. If you hired a full-time chief, fire chief, I don't know how that works out with sharing that position, but there would probably be some good stretch marks and scratches on that person to get them into their offices, I would guess. And Shar's not even gonna look at me nicely when I say that.
Okay. But you're going to have to invest a significant amount of money, and you're going to want to look at this person as definitely being a long-term employee, not part-time, not something that you had just bring in. And he has not included that he's got to do a full-blown background on this person. So,
Can I'm just trying to understand what was all discussed here. That's like, this one individual that does clerical work would not be suited, that's not be suited to work in both areas?
yes, he would. She, yes, they could work in it.
It would be.
It would be. The certification comes over here. So when she's doing certification work, she has to be in the police department doing it.
Depending on what he or she would do, yes. And again, that's something I don't know where the fire department's at, and I know Shar is at a point where she needs someone.
Is she doing work for you?
Shar? No.
Oh, okay.
Well, yes, she does some
No.
work. I don't know if
Fire
I'd call it
department, too?
hourly, amount of
We-
hours each week, but
Yeah. Well, then her hours would be loosened up if we wouldn't need anybody in Char's office if she wasn't doing something for you.
I'm sorry.
Okay. If you've
Help me
got
out.
her doing
If
things
I've
for
got
you.
Char's not doing anything for me
Oh,
other than
okay.
maybe some post-board stuff in July or June, and other than that, time cards and all that other billing stuff, but that she does for everyone else.
Yeah.
I just don't, the percentage of time that you said you spent you doing paperwork is, in my mind, a waste of your talents.
But,
And it's a waste of yours. You know, not,
Well,
it's
to
a
go back to
repetitive thing that you can push.
Aaron's question is, the person, if they were to do my data entry, would have to go to a class.
Right.
It's not a certified class, but it'd be a class to understand.
But you're better served to not be doing that, and doing other higher
Oh, yeah, I
level
mean,
things,
if you,
so.
for example, last month I spent 24 hours entering calls, just calls.
Yeah.
24 hours in a month, when it used to be 10, 8 hours, but now the call volume's up, so it's,
So how
24 to
important
26.
is a new truck as a method to make this happen? Can't we just repair what you have now?
Would,
Well, this remove vehicle upgrade from fire. Well, I'm just thinking, don't we have a truck for the fire chief?
we have a Tahoe that is shared with everybody for duty and EMS calls.
He uses his own truck.
Oh. How much is that? Can we buy that from you? So we don't have a truck that.
You have to remember, we would get rid of the Tahoe.
Yeah, I know, but I'm just, you understand, I'm just trying to look at ways that we could get into
I
this
understand.
and then maybe
It's
bring,
just-
but is there a vehicle that we have that you could use?
We don't have any, the utility that the Relief Association bought is our first non-fire truck at the department, besides the Tahoe.
so if we add these full-time staff, we're adding another couple $100,000. Now we're increasing our budget $400,000 in wages.
And the tax capacity for Cross Lake, just from 1.5 billion with a B
Well-
to 2 billion with a B. And I'm saying people are moving up here.
People are going to come in with that truth and taxation statement, and they're not going to care what the tax capacity is. They're going to care what their tax statement says.
But they want the fire department to come when they have a fire, and they want the police to come when they have a police problem, and they want to be able to talk to somebody when they've got a problem with whatever, so.
Well, that doesn't mean you have carte blanche just to increase the taxes.
So the sheet says $225,348, and did I hear you say it adds $400,000?
I'm saying, we added $200,000 to the wages in 2022. It's going to go up another 3%.
Talking about,
Okay,
This
I'm
number.
just saying that your taxes are going to go up 400,000.
something I don't know.
It's going to go up another 200,000. So now you're adding,
Coming up another 200,000.
if you're going to do this.
Well, that's right, it comes up 225,348, not 400,000 like you said.
Well,
The
I'm
wages-
including the
wages-
increase
We've done the wages.
I know, but we haven't budgeted that additional 7.5%.
Yes, we have.
Okay,
We're talking
we
about
budgeted
20
7.5%.
We're talking about 2023, and this budget reflects,
I'm saying we didn't do it in 2022, and we gave a 14.5% increase, and we only budgeted 7.5%. That's what I'm saying.
That might be true.
It is true.
and this model reflects the new salaries that were recently negotiated for the contracts that are closed. It also reflects the latest memorandum of understanding with the fire department. So we're talking just about 2023,
Right.
the top of this, that page is what's reflected in one of the budget models. And what we were left to decide on is what are we doing with head count? And that's what's left here. And so when we do that, there's been a lot of discussion on how did I come up with 91,000? If you hire somebody for, let's say, 52,000, you've got about $9,200 in payroll taxes. You've got about $23,000 in employer's share of health insurance if they take a family policy. You've got a $6,000 HSA. That's how you get to that number. Comes to about $92,000. That's a real number. If you think you're going to get someone to do the level of work that Chief Lee would require or Chief Lohmiller would require, you're probably not going to find somebody for under 20 bucks an hour to do that work and do it accurately. That's just how it is. The other thing you need to think about too is from an operating perspective, and I can show you how this works, but we need to move to a different page. And the page I'm going to take you to is page 12. Pages 11 and 12. Okay, so we're on page 11 right now.
Even fully loaded, it's 4% less than this year.
And what I'm going to look at is the bottom down here. Now, this is if you take out the full-time equivalents for, we're on page 12, page 11, Marcia.
11.
And if we take out the admin person that's shared between several departments and upgrading to a fire chief, full-time, the debt service levy is going to change a little bit, but not a whole lot when you take $500,000 out. It might change by less than 1%, okay? So you're still going to be about a 5% adjustment on your debt service levy, regardless of what you do with assessments, because the size is large enough, it's going to be about 5%. Operating and capital is about 7.75%. That's actually less than what inflation is right now. It's closer to 9 to 10, okay? If you add those folks back in, debt service doesn't change a whole lot. It'll be that right around 5% compared to last year increase. We're not going to be able to change that. And you're up to a 12% adjustment for operating and capital. That's the big picture.
And the city is taking in more money. It's listed here. You're getting in more money than we took in 2022. But your actual levy rate is almost 4% less than it was in 2022.
And that's based on market value, yep.
Agreed, and market value might go down another year, but my point is that a lot of things went up in price this year, including salaries, what you have to pay to keep people, and the amount of work that people have to do just because of meetings for roads, meetings for unions, meetings for budgets, meetings for whatever. We're putting a lot more work and calls. I mean, the police and fire both taking more calls, and SHAR's got more stuff to do. Sometime it's going to go poof. Somebody's going to bust with what we're asking them to do. They need some more help.
So Chip, I got a question for you. Your fire training company, Fire Inc., I think it is, are you going to consider that to be a conflict of interest if you were the chief?
I'm going to abstain from that, but yeah, I don't know if I'd apply for the chief's position or not.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's already been addressed, Dave, and you were provided that letter a few years ago. That was looked at by the
Well, I
state.
don't recall it from a few years ago, but.
I do.
Yeah,
refresh
it
my
has
memory.
been. There was a letter that was all approved by the city and everything else.
It was looked at by the state, and I provided you a copy of it. You didn't agree with it, but I did provide it to you.
Yeah, well, so
So-
you're,
I'm sorry.
you're going to abstain from answering that, but,
I'll answer right now, Dave.
no, that's all right, you don't have to. if you
I
don't
told
want
you we already had a letter and it was confirmed by council members. That's totally has nothing to do with the position, and I told you that I'm not sure if I'd apply for that position in the first place.
to. Okay,
I'm just saying, as I've said in the past, things are changing in this community. The model of the fire department needs to change, and if I'm not here, if I step down, there's nobody that is sitting in line to take over my position at the pay rate that I'm getting paid right now. They don't have the time, or the pay's not good enough, there's no insurance, because I wouldn't be putting this time in that I have, because I have the job that I have with my company, that I have the time to be able to spend at the fire department, and I have insurance through my company. But if I ask one of my other firefighters to come in here and do what I'm doing, ain't happening.
yeah.
And the department will go in the tank, I can guarantee it. Because they don't have the time, they're passionate about what they do, but they don't have time for the position that, I mean, I put over, was it 300 hours last month? 300 hours, 300.
Well,
at
you know what,
$20.
I gotta ask a question here of the whole council. How did, and I don't know how to ask it other than asking it crudely, but how did it blow up so fast? You know, what are we doing now that we didn't do 10 years ago?
Well, we've quadrupled our amount of calls. There's many more plan reviews, there are many more meetings to go to, there's much more I mean, a lot of my hours that I've been doing in the last 10 years, I didn't even put in there, I was just doing it. But now that it was getting more and more and more and consuming more of my time, I had to put in more hours. I mean, just, if you think about it, 10, 12 years ago, in the whole year, I put 45 hours in just putting calls.
How long have you been chief? How long have you been in there?
10 years.
10.
45 hours for entering just calls in the data bank. Now it's 125 hours in a year. I mean, everything's just quadrupled. I mean, it's just, everything's blown up. There's a lot of things you can look at. You can talk to, I'm not promoting this position for me, and I've told the city administrator that they need to go find the information about paid on, or full-time chiefs, because there's many of them, Waconia, Albertville, Princeton, Pine City. I mean, there's a lot of them, but they're the fire chief, fire marshal, and emergency manager. All the emergency management stuff that I do, all that stuff for COVID, yeah, I got compensated for that, but there's a lot of things that you all do not see that I do.
Well, I'm not questioning
So I'm just
that.
letting you
do
know,
a
this
lot.
job
There's
is
no
getting way
question.
bigger, and I'm getting burnt out myself. And
Yeah.
I'm ready to back off a lot, because
So
I'm
let's go
tired.
back to answer
can
your
I throw
question.
something in here just to
How
help?
did we get to where we are today? Excuse me. But this is in one of your previous packets. So what we're asking police and fire to protect and to provide service to in 2016 was $1,152,577,400. That's the estimated market value of what we're asking these folks to provide service to. Today, that number is 2.1 billion. In 2016, it was 1.152. That's what's changed. The value of what you're protecting and the demand for services to do that.
We've got a whole new house coming on that's up there on Perkins Road, potentially multi-million-dollar home. I've heard as high as 10 million.
So I'm sorry. On page 20 of 41, if you guys want to look at that, the very last number in the right-hand column is in the levy. And there's nothing, we talked about this as a good idea. My thoughts have changed on this. We could leave some of that in there, but that has no home. There's nothing identified. Tom Swenson's talked about the thoughts of the public works people, indicating that, you know, we may have to have the roads go as far as having residents complain that their road's getting bad enough, rather than just picking and doing it on their own, letting the roads get by and maintain them a little more. But I do think it's more important for the these two positions than that 250. So, you know, in my mind, I could make a motion that we reduce that 250 to 0 or 50,000 to help soften this impact to our levy.
But keep in mind now, you're also going to deal with the impact of the detour, and those roads are a disaster, complete disaster, where that detour went through back here.
Well, then if we don't have money in here to cover that, I don't know. Weren't we getting an estimate or quote? There was,
It was in that 150 range.
Phil was supposed to do that.
We're going to get through the winter on it. That was to come out of that 250.
So we
Yeah.
could take some of the money out of there
So,
to help.
but
pay
I
for
mean,
the-
it's, both of them have necessities.
Right.
Isn't the engineer working on Harbor Lane, or I don't know what the harbor something? Isn't it Harbor that they're talking about a trail beside it and trying to get the right of ways?
They've done
Haven't we
some-
invested in that one?
They've done some work on it. What needs to happen is we need to decide what to do and then provide clear direction and go forward from there.
Aren't they trying to get the right of way and easements for the trail, or not?
No,
They're not trying to even get the right of way?
I don't know exactly where they're
Okay.
at
I think
with
they're
that
just
project.
identifying everything.
They've identified
Oh.
things.
Okay.
So there might not be any road work for a couple of years. Don't know. I mean, we don't have a plan. Is anybody complaining other than Mr. John Pribble?
Just a few people. We hear a few complaints every now and then. I mean, if you think about the big picture, we're kind of late in the game
Oh, yeah, there's nothing
to
for
be
next
doing
year.
something for next summer.
There's
But it doesn't
nothing.
mean we shouldn't be planning for it.
So then the fire chief would go, if you hire a full-time fire chief, they would go in the department heads union, that MNBA. Assuming, right? They'll be union. The clerical one will be union, would ask me, or what?
It would need to be a position that would be negotiated, which fit best into what union, whether Teamsters or AFSCME. It's not a supervisory position, so it wouldn't be MNP.
Fire chief would be, wouldn't it?
Fire chief would be MNP, yep. Clerical would probably be AFSCME. That's not to say they couldn't work for police.
So why can't we take that 250 to 150 then? And just label it for log landing repairs? And then you can leave it in
We
there the
can.
following years. Is there anybody in agreement? That'll help offset some of the costs. If we all vote the right way to get more staff here.
I don't know.
Well,
I was
and-
looking at that big number, that 18% number.
Problem is, a few years ago, when they reduced everything and reduced down staff and everything, 3 staff members or something like that went away? What they did is they shot the city in the foot when they did it. They should have kept some of them around to handle the growth.
Right.
And
Well-
we are growing, whether anybody wants to admit it or not.
Yeah, I'll tell you, I'm an advocate of doing this,
Yeah. But,
but I'm looking for a way to soften the cost.
Well, out of that public works, you can take that truck out of there, or the, whatever, it's almost 100,000 in there.
One way to soften it is to assess.
replacing an old piece of junk.
Or,
Well, no, he's getting it this year, and it's in the budget.
Is it the 2-ton that he's buying that you're talking about? I think he's got
His
that
1 ton, he's got it ordered.
Sure.
Yeah.
No,
They don't have it.
Mike Todd wants to say something.
replacement of his, that's next year.
No, well, the 1 ton was in there, but he can't get a 1 ton.
My biggest concern is the assessment issue. If the council's willing to continue assessing you know, I would have really fought hard for the 250 if you were going to quit assessing. And you do have the old log landing road to deal with. So, you know, to reduce that down, leave something in there for the old log landing. The other thing I want to point out, and this is off the latest balance sheet. Public Works Bridges, he started out the year at 119,000. 3,300 has been added, and I'm assuming that's a first half tax, or yeah, first half tax for assessments on the Dream Island Bridge. And at the last meeting, Mike made a comment that I need to correct. He talked about they were putting the assessments in a fund like that in case a plow truck hits the guardrails and to do stuff. That's what you've got insurance for. What happened was when we did the Sunrise Island Bridge, there was county state aid funds, and then the city out of the general fund funded the city's portion, or the matching portion from the city. And the assessments, it was a $6,000 assessment to each property on the island. And as those came in, and that was still while I was there, we were putting them back in the general fund, because that's where the general fund fronted the money for the city share of that project. I think that's how that started. But you can look at that, there's 122,000 in a designated account under Public Works that, you know, if you do lower the 250 and you need to do stuff with Old Log Landing, that might be one source that you could tap. And I'm not saying to take it down to nothing. You know, you could probably take 100,000 out of that and leave 22,000 in there. And there's still more assessments that are coming in on Dream Island. So that's still building up. Not very many.
The other thing we did is we paid for the gabion baskets on Melinda Shores on there. It was
Okay.
40 grand.
Okay. So,
And I
yeah.
mentioned that at the last meeting. There are other sources. Tell us what you want.
Yep. So I'm just saying, you know, that's a possibility. You could tap that for 100,000 if you go into redoing Old Log Landing next year, and, you know, say you reduce it 150,000 down to 100,000, and you need more money, you could tap that.
Thanks, yeah.
Yeah, you know, and those are all things we talked about at the last meeting. The purpose of that bridge repair fund is when we do have a bridge repair, like the guardrails over on Dream Island, we're currently fixing, we'll have some costs there. And we do have insurance for hitting bridges and things like that, but we don't have insurance for when we need to restore the footings on a bridge like we do over on Melinda Shores. So we've had a lot of talk about head count, fire chief. We're really not doing the fire chief position the right way. You know, we're trying to fix it right now, and we should probably have a little bit longer look at it, so go ahead.
I'm gonna come up there.
You can go right there.
So I know that we've talked about this fire chief, and I just think we're going about it the wrong way, because it makes it look like I'm trying to promote a job for myself, which I'm not. Over the past year and a half, 2 years, we've talked about changing the model, like I mentioned earlier. There's a process of doing this, and I've reached out with the State Fire Marshal and some other entities to figure out the right process. So as of right now, I don't feel comfortable with this decision of trying to put a full chief in the position right now. I think we should create along with the Public Safety Committee, along with a fire/board to bring the information, because I know you've been swamped, we've all been swamped this summer, because I've been collecting data, but we just haven't been able to put it together. because of the road and everything else, but I just don't feel comfortable you voting on a fire chief right now.
Chip, I don't have a hard time budgeting money for that, but I'd like to look into it deeper.
Right, it needs to be done the right process, and I don't think we're doing it the right process at this time. There's a way, and there's a good correlation with Albertville Fire. They did it perfectly. It shows, and then you put it out for, you put the job description out, and then you try to get people to apply, and then you put it together and how it all works. But we have all that, we just haven't been able to put it all together. So maybe we hold that out till 2024, or second half of
To what
2023.
David said, we could gather the money in the event that something comes out of that process.
It takes a little while.
It takes a little while, and I don't have a
Albertville
problem with that
took
either,
them 3 years.
right? But there's still a clerical person that could be used to help out.
I know they need help more than I
So
do.
part of this is, I'm with you, I think we should put money in there, because we're trying to nail down the budget. We haven't decided
Yeah,
on
right, I get
the
it.
process and the
Vacation
job
rentals
description.
is something that, vacation rentals,
Right.
VRBOs could take some time, but we haven't decided what we're doing with any of that
Job
stuff.
duties, right. But, so there's.
You buy me a
Did
truck.
we have a motion on the floor?
Yes, that's what I was just going to bring up.
That's
Did we? What is it?
Yeah, it's to deduct the 225, 348 out of the budget.
To remove it out, and
Yep.
we've kind of decided not to do that.
not-
He just said, wait till 2024.
Okay, so you got a motion, is there a second?
You seconded.
No, I seconded it. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
I don't think I'm in favor anymore. All opposed?
Aye.
Aye. And I'm opposed to it, Marcia, because I think we just talked about moving 150 of that to the,
Yeah, let's go through that in detail,
I
so.
think Chip just said we should go through the process and maybe budget for it in 2024.
I didn't hear that.
Isn't
Yeah,
that what you said?
Yeah, I said it
Okay.
takes time. You can't just do it in
Yeah.
3 months. And I know we've been talking about it for
Exactly.
3, 4 years, really. It's just with everybody being so busy, we haven't been able to put things together to present to council.
And we don't have a job description for this other clerical person that we're talking about, what exactly they'd be doing.
So let's.
I mean, let's throw it in the budget.
Well,
No, we're not
I would
just
love to be
doing that.
compensated for the amount of time that I put into the department, for sure.
So let's talk
And
about,
paying $20 an hour is not quite, the greatest for me, but.
let's talk about what we just did, okay? So if we take out the incremental impact of a full-time fire chief, that means we're going to remove the vehicle too. And if you reallocate $100,000 from the bridge fund to something else, not sure what that is yet, that gets you $233,860.
I think Aaron wants that for log, whatever, what's it called?
Haven't touched log land, the $250,000 for whatever we're going to do with roads next year. So the 250 stays in from page 21. You take this out.
Well, you're saying that this Harbor Lane, that we don't have very much time into it. I was thinking they were full bore into it, the engineering and stuff, so we don't need 250,000 in that road construction.
The 250 was not for any road, it was
Yeah.
a recommendation, as I understand it,
Yep.
to start building the penny piggy bank up.
Yep.
Right, but I would suggest that number gets dropped. I would like to see it go to 100,000.
So if we drop that, and we drop the full-time fire chief, we've dropped a couple $100,000 then.
But I'll just speak up, I think that other 91,500 should stay in there.
what was that for?
Did you want to do anything with
Add that
reassigning
person
fund balance from
over
bridges?
here and however it comes through. And, I mean, how long is this gonna take to find somebody?
Well, we gotta
Well,
figure
to
out what we're
create,
what we're
it
looking
and
for.
just to have all the things in place, I mean, we have a lot of stuff we can refer to. It wouldn't take very long, but I'm not gonna sit here and answer that. I mean, I'm not trying to promote this position for me, that's what I'm trying to say.
Right, no, I understand
It's a position that has to be, just like all the other positions, researched, we have all the data, we show the increase of hours and the time, and then if we do the short-term rental, that's gonna be a whole nother deal. So, I mean, the amount of time will definitely exceed. I mean, the job description will be of fire chief, fire marshal, emergency manager.
Isn't the county doing a hearing on the short-term rental October 11th? And if we want something done, we should attend that meeting.
Right, but the city can always make different changes to make it more tough. But, so, I mean, I can't answer how long it would take. It all depends on how fast. I mean, I'm not a full-time employee, so
I understand that, but
it's not my position to create the position.
I don't think we should let loose of the fact that we need that role. And I would say that, we could, I mean, in 6 months from now, or the middle of next year, we might say we want to move ahead with this, and then we have no funds to pay for the person.
So we should budget the money for it, but not authorize the hiring of it at this point until we look into it.
And we don't have to budget all the money. If it takes 6 months to get this done into next year, then let's have half a year of money there. And if we don't get there, then that money can be set aside for the following year. But the last thing, I mean, in my humble thought is that if we'd post for this job, people would apply. If Chip decides to move to Florida or someplace, I'd want him here for a period of time to train this person or something.
Correct. That's what I would do. That's my
But,
vision.
Chip could get sick in the next month, God help him, and then what do we do?
God, I could get sick of the next month.
We
I
all
don't know what
could.
would happen.
That can happen anywhere on any position.
I know, but
So,
we're.
we
but
can't cover that.
We have to have some future planning here, right, Tom? Thank you.
We got up some good conversation. I think we should budget money so we got the flexibility next year to do something.
I agree.
Okay, half.
Our tax numbers are still going to go down from that 31% we were at anyway, either way.
Well,
The levy amount.
you
Or
mean
levy.
the tax
The levy.
rate?
Yeah, the
Well,
levy.
the tax rate, yeah. You
So
can
you
say
wanna-
it's going to go down, but everybody's
Well-
value went up, so
But the
throw
rate
that one out.
The numbers are all going to go up.
So as it stands right now, my marching orders for the next meeting are to get updated bond schedules, to get rid of the $500,000 of bonding. And if I hear you right, you want to take 50% of the incremental impact to the fire chief?
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
so 50% of fire chief.
That doesn't mean we're hiring somebody tomorrow.
And then take
100% of the
$100,000.
clerical, 100,000 of the, 100% of the clerical, leave in there.
Leave in.
Keep that
And then
in.
take $100,000 out of roads.
I'd take 150 out. I would
Okay.
propose that, down to 100.
Well, we know that if we fix this back here, it's going to be over 100, so that's why,
And you're gonna take, what do you got there?
If we took 100 out, Dave, we'd have still 150 for Log Landing. For roads.
If you take 150 out, you'll still have 100 in there. What I'm saying is you could tap the bridge fund for another 100.
Right.
Log Landing comes in higher than 100.
Yeah, and the bridge fund doesn't, that's just cash we have, yeah.
Yeah.
100, 122 to 100, if we have to, but those other
I'd-
three,
yep.
those
I'd
others
like
won't
to-
impact the levy.
I like the public works budget cleaned up too, since he's going to get his truck. That you can reduce that public works budget for the truck. You already lost your truck.
But
You're getting your truck.
can't we leave 50% of the truck in there too?
Why would you? Because he's getting it by the end of December. Oh, you mean
this
the
is a
fire
different
truck?
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm on a different, I'm in the
What-
public
What I did
works.
is I took the 133,860, includes 50,000 for a truck, and 83, whatever, 85 for staffing. We're just cutting that whole number in half.
Great.
And he does, are you on public works now?
No.
Or where are you?
You go, get out of here.
So what about Public Works? What do you want?
Public Works, you have that 1-ton truck, which we're purchasing more than 1-ton truck already. And he said he thought he was going to get it by the end of December. Why do we have it in the 2023 budget? Let's clean it up.
Oh, we don't know when we're going to get it. And that's still an
Well,
open item.
he thinks he's going to get it in December. If he doesn't,
Okay.
just expend it out and put it in accounts payable. You got it in the right year.
So how do you want to pay for it?
It's in 2022.
Okay. What page are you on?
And in 2023, you got it in
What
there
page are you
again.
on?
Yeah.
I thought there was 80,000 in there. That was for the 1-ton that they can't get, but they ordered the 2-ton.
I know, but
Right,
that's
so
in
Marcia's
2022.
question is, I have it in both places because wasn't clear when we'd actually get it. So now I'm hearing you say we're going to get it before year end and it'll be in payable, so we would take the $80,000 out of 2023. In either case, we wouldn't levy for it. Okay?
Okay, but let's just take it out of there.
Yep.
Because that was per Pat. Pat said he thought
we
he's
got
going to
it.
get it.
You got it? Okay, moving on.
That's a whole different, he hasn't brought in anything and he's not, yeah. He hasn't brought anything in.
The next council meeting, if I understood.
Well, this is a budget meeting, he should be here. Ask him for it.
He wasn't able to make it today, Marcia.
What?
Pat was not able to make it, family
Okay,
issues.
I'm just saying.
Yep, I know what you're
He
saying.
could put a paper in front of us too.
Well, he had a very family emergency.
He had a family emergency and he can't
Well,
be here,
I
period.
don't know that, so
Well,
don't
now you
berate
do.
me for saying something like that.
Yep. Okay, we've been here for almost 2.5 hours. What else? And the Vikings play tonight.
The sewer plant, I'd like to drop the 100,000 to 50,000 in maintenance. If
Based on
everybody
what?
would agree with that.
Based
What?
on what data?
Based on you have nothing earmarked for that 100,000. And we just finished the clarifiers, the lift stations. I guess if something happens, we fund it out of the general fund anyway, so
And that's not a levy item.
I know. So, but it should be, there should.
So are
there
you
should
going
be
to come
one.
back when something breaks and say, why didn't you put it in the budget?
We have so many pumps
Take
and
the
stuff
blame.
out
You
there.
can say Marshall wanted to knock it down to 50,000. Go ahead, I got broad shoulders. I can take it if you want to rip.
What does the council want to do with that?
I'd leave it in there.
I'd keep it in too.
Money pit.
Yeah, I respect the fact to cut things down, but I think we got to have some monies available for,
Do you guys want to vote on that? I got 3 keep it ins and 1 take it out and 1 no vote so far.
I'll make a motion, we leave it in, 100,000.
Second.
and-
Second it.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Okay, so you're gonna do 500K?
I'm going to reduce the size of the bond issue by 500,000. I'm going to take half of the fire chief out. I'm going to take 100,000 out of roads, and I'm going to take $80,000 out of the truck we should get by December.
So you're gonna leave the clerical person in?
Wait a
Yes.
minute. Why are we taking the 80,000 for that 2-ton truck?
I have it in 2023. It wasn't clear which year we would get it, so we'll need to confirm we'll get it this year.
But it's going to cost more than $80,000, so I thought you were going to keep and roll that money forward and reduce what was budgeted for 2023. Because I think
You
it was
could take-
about a $40,000 difference.
Well, it was about 96,000 when we came,
Yeah. The 20,000 street sweeper, he said the street sweeper's fine.
yep.
That's
So
what
we
he
were taking
said.
so we can take we're taking it out of the street sweeper, and then,
And the 80,000, or you got
You
100,000.
need part of that 80,000 to pay for it.
Aaron, you're, okay. I'm,
so what you really want is the street sweeper out of there too.
it's in there twice, Aaron. It's in there in 2022.
I understand.
And there's
But I
80.
said you keep the 180,000 and you reduce the other one down to where it needs to go
Okay,
down.
so here's what we're gonna do.
we
We'll
can't-
take the $80,000 out because Marcia's confirmed and assured us we'll get it this year, right? And we'll take the street sweeper out for the balance.
I
so
didn't
that's
confirm
100.
that. I said, Pat said he was going to get it. And besides
giving-
that,
I'm
if he
giving you a
thinks it's
hard
going to be in
time.
December, you can get it in January, put it in accounts payable, expend it out in
I understand
2022.
what accounts payable are, trust me.
Okay.
What we
That's
were
in the
doing
levy.
is we were trying to identify items that we were trying to get in this year yet. What we typically do is we've made some changes in what we're spending in that department. We decided not to do the street sweeper. We said the truck costs more. And what the discussion was at that meeting was when we know what the answers to those questions are, we'll adjust the levy accordingly, just like we did in 2019 and 2020 and 2021. Because we don't want to levy twice for the same thing. Okay? But we leave it in there at the higher amount, so we have visibility to what we're trying to talk about and discuss.
So are you going to take it out at 2023 or not?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
So it was page, what was, is,
It was page 19, so there's 80,000 and 20,000 coming out. That's 100.
did we take the 250 that was in Public Works to be identified to 100 or 150?
150.
You made that motion.
Because we know the road out here is going to be
100.
150.
I thought I said put it at 100.
Okay, 100.
So you're taking 150.
You know, before we confuse it some more, why don't we adjourn?
So there's 100,000 in
I'll second that.
All in favor? We're done.